There's a certain kind of quiet that only settles into a house after 80 years of living. It isn't loneliness, not in the way most people mean it. It's more like the stillness in the air after a storm has passed. Everything is clean, but you can still feel the weight of what it took to get through it. I sit here in this chair, the one my Sarah always said was too stiff, and I find myself doing a strange kind of accounting, not with numbers, but with silences. You count the costs in the phone calls you decided not to make, the hands you let go of a second too soon, the doors you closed ever so carefully behind you. Everyone talks about survival as a victory, and it is. But they never mention what you have to trade away to make it to the other side. My hands, they don't shake much, not for a man my age. They're steady when I pick up the little shears. This bonsai tree on the windowsill was a gift from my grandson. He said it would teach me patience. I think it teaches something else. I see a new branch, a tiny thing, reaching out from the trunk, trying to find its own piece of the sun. It has a stubborn look to it, full of life. But it's growing in the wrong direction, upsetting the balance I've worked so hard to maintain. So I bring the shears close, a clean snip, and it's gone. It falls away without a sound. You learn, don't you? Some things are better cut short before they grow wild and break your heart. It's a funny thing, this kind of wisdom. It doesn't come from books or from someone telling you how the world works. It grows on you, quiet and slow, like moss on a stone. You don't even notice it's there until one day you look down and realize you've been carrying its weight for a very long time. It's the kind of knowledge that's paid for, not in dollars, but in years, in moments you wish you could have back. My name is Harold Eugene Mitchell. I'm 80 years old, and I've found that a long life doesn't always give you the right answers, but it does give you a much clearer view of all your wrong ones. That bonsai tree, it takes me back. I wasn't always an old man fussing over tiny branches. I was young once, with hands that could draw a perfectly straight line without a ruler. My first real office job was as a draftsman. The air in that place always smelled of graphite, sharp and clean, and the hum of the fluorescent lights was the only music we had. There was a fellow there named Frank. He was a white man, kind enough, with a laugh that came easy. We'd share our lunches, talk about wanting to buy a house someday, about the silly things our wives would say. It felt simple, like we were just two men working at two desks, side by side. A genuine friendship, I thought. We were assigned a big project together, a set of intricate schematics for a new building. Frank was good with the numbers, the calculations, but my gift was in my hands. I drew the final plans. I remember the feeling of the pen, the way the ink settled into the heavy paper, creating something from nothing. It took me weeks, late nights, tired eyes, but a deep sense of pride in the work. It was clean. It was precise. It was the best I had ever done. Frank would look over my shoulder and just whistle, a low sound of appreciation. "Harold," he'd say, "that's a work of art." We were a team, and that drawing was the proof of it. The day of the presentation, the partners of the firm were all there. Men in dark suits with faces that didn't smile much. Our boss, Mr. Abernathy, held up my drawing for them all to see. The light caught the ink, and it looked even better than it had on my drafting table. A wave of satisfaction washed over me. Then Mr. Abernathy cleared his throat and smiled, looking straight past me, directly at my friend. "Frank," he said, his voice booming in the quiet room, "this is brilliant work, a masterpiece." I felt the air leave my lungs. He never once looked my way. I was standing right there, but I might as well have been a ghost. I turned my head just slightly to look at Frank. I was waiting for him to speak up, to say, "Mr. Abernathy, Harold is the one who drew that. He's the artist." It would have been so easy, just a few words to set the record straight. But he just stood there, a small, pleased smile on his face. He nodded, accepting the praise as if it were his and his alone. He didn't even flinch. In that moment, watching him soak in the applause that belonged to me, the world shifted. The humiliation wasn't in Mr. Abernathy's ignorance. It was in my friend's silence. The silence was louder than any insult I had ever heard. We walked back to our desks without a word. The air between us was thick and cold. I sat down and looked at my hands, the same hands that had made the drawing. They didn't feel like my own anymore. Frank never spoke of it, and neither did I. There was nothing to say. The friendship, or what I thought was a friendship, had been snipped away, cleanly. That was the day I learned my most important lesson. It wasn't about the injustice or the stolen credit. It was about the terrifying speed at which a connection could be severed by a simple choice not to speak. It was the first and deepest cut, a wound that taught me to always hold the shears. For years, I replayed that walk back to our desks in my mind. The rage was a hot, solid thing in my chest, and I wanted nothing more than to shatter the quiet. To stand up and shout, that was my work, my hands. But what would have followed? A quiet dismissal, the loss of a job I needed. A man like me couldn't afford that kind of scene, not then. So I swallowed it. I packed the anger down, deep inside, until it was a small, hard stone. On the outside, I was calm. I picked up my pencil and went back to work. I told myself it was dignity, that my silence was a kind of strength. It was survival. But it felt like I was erasing myself, line by line, just as carefully as I had drawn those schematics. Even now, sitting in this chair, a part of me believes I did the only thing I could. You learn to choose your battles, and that one was a losing fight from the start. But another part of me, another part wonders what I lost in that silence. It wasn't just a friendship with Frank. It was a piece of my own trust in the world. That day, I decided it was safer to be the one holding the shears. It was better to make the cut myself, preemptively, than to be the branch that gets snipped off without warning. I called it wisdom. I called it being smart. But looking back, I see the fear that was hiding behind those words. I was so terrified of being hurt again that I started building a wall, brick by silent brick. The truth is, you can't just contain anger like that. It seeps into the soil of you. It changes what grows there. After Frank, I became a watcher. I watched for the subtle shift in a man's eyes, the slight hesitation in his voice, the praise given to someone else for a shared effort. I became an expert in the anatomy of betrayal, always ready for it. This vigilance, I thought it was my armor. It kept me safe, yes. I was never made a fool of like that again. But an armor is also a cage. It keeps you from harm, but it also keeps you from being touched. I survived, but I wonder if the man who came out the other side was the same one who went in. I see my grandson David, and it's like looking at a photograph of a man I used to be. He's 22, and he has a kind of light in him that I've worked my whole life to dim in myself. He makes music, and for a while he had a new friend, a young fella from a different background. They would fill this quiet house with their collaboration, their easy laughter, a sound I hadn't realized I missed. I would sit here in my chair and watch them, feeling a warmth I couldn't deny, but with a deep, cold anxiety right underneath it. David was so unguarded, sharing his ideas with an optimism I recognized from a long, long time ago. He was building a bridge, and I just kept waiting to hear it fall. One afternoon he came home, and the house fell silent again. He didn't make a scene, just sat on the steps of the porch, looking at nothing. His friend had taken a piece of music they wrote together, claimed it as his own, and won a small local grant for it. I felt that old, familiar rage rise up in my chest, a cold and heavy thing. It was Frank and Mr. Abernathy all over again. I went out and sat beside him. I wanted to give him the only inheritance I had. "You have to be smarter than this," I told him, my voice softer than I intended. "You keep your guard up. You learn to protect what's yours." He turned to look at me, and there wasn't defeat in his eyes, just a quiet resolve that shook me to my core. "I know, Grandpa, but I'm not going to stop making music, and I'm not going to stop trusting people." He took a breath. "I'll just get better at it. I'll get better at healing." His words didn't land like a lesson. They landed like a judgment. All my life I had called my strategy strength, a way to preserve my dignity. But seeing him, I understood it for what it was, a form of surrender. He was willing to risk the pain to stay open. I had spent 80 years ensuring I would never be hurt that way again. And in doing so, I had built a prison and called it a fortress. All my life, I held on to the belief that what I was doing was a form of self-preservation, a necessary armor. I thought that by cutting ties, by holding back, by refusing to give anyone the power to hurt me again, I was protecting my dignity. It became my life's work, a quiet, stubborn mission. Each person I kept at arm's length, each opportunity for connection I let pass by, I counted it as a small victory against a world that had once made me feel invisible. I mistook solitude for safety and silence for strength. I truly believed that dignity was a fragile thing, a small flame that I had to shield from the wind with my own two hands. even if it meant my hands got burned in the process. It was David's quiet resolve that finally tore down that old tired belief. He didn't give me a lecture. He just lived a different truth in front of me. In his pain, he found a reason to be more open, not less. And I finally understood. Dignity isn't a fortress you have to defend day and night. It's the foundation the house is built on. It's something inside you, a quiet certainty of your own worth that no one can give you and no one can take away. My whole strategy, my life's work of cutting things short, it didn't protect my dignity at all. It just starved my heart. It kept me safe from the sting of betrayal, but it also kept me from the warmth of a hand held in trust. The heaviest truth to carry at my age is the accounting of it all. I see now that I spent far more energy preventing the wound than I ever would have spent healing from it. Healing is a sharp, clean pain that eventually subsides. But the effort of constant vigilance, of building and rebuilding walls, is a dull, endless ache that you learn to live with. You can even mistake it for peace, but it's the peace of an empty room, the quiet of a life unrisked. I didn't avoid the pain by holding those shears so tightly. I just chose a slower, more patient kind of heartbreak, one that unfolds over a lifetime. When I watch young folks walk into a room now, I see something I recognize all too well. They carry themselves with a kind of practiced confidence, a shield they've polished until it shines. But I don't look at the shield. I watch their hands. I watch their eyes. I see them scanning for the safest corner, the easiest conversation, calculating the emotional risk before they even say a simple hello. It's a quiet, careful dance of wanting to be seen, but being terrified of being truly exposed. I see them measuring out their laughter, holding back the fullness of a story just in case it's met with indifference. It's not about malice. It's the deep human fear of being made invisible while standing in plain sight. Sometimes people ask me how a man gets to be my age without letting the world make him hard. They expect a simple secret, a recipe for endurance. But I don't have one. All I can tell them is to pay close attention to the quality of their silences. There's the silence that rests between two people who understand each other without words. It's a comfortable, warm thing. And then there's the silence that's a wall. It's the one built brick by brick from things left unsaid, from the correction you didn't make, the apology you swallowed, the truth you decided was too costly to speak. We think that second kind of silence is our armor, but an armor you never take off eventually fuses to the skin. We think the big moments are the ones that define us, the grand betrayals and the loud heartbreaks. But the truth, as I see it now, is that a life is shaped by the 1,000 little cuts we make every single day. The decision not to return a phone call because the conversation feels too heavy. The choice to let a friend's small sadness go unmentioned because you don't know the right words to offer. Each one seems so small, so insignificant, a single snip of the shears, but you do it again and again, and you start to believe it's just prudence. It's only when you look back after decades that you see you weren't just pruning a few branches. You were clearing a forest. I suppose we all have a garden like that in our minds, a place full of branches we snipped away over the years, a person, a feeling, a difficult conversation we decided was just too risky to let grow. I wonder, what would you find if you took a quiet walk through yours? You don't have to go back and try to fix a single thing. Lord knows, some fences are there for a good reason. But maybe just take a moment to look. Notice a connection you cut short. Think about who you were when you first picked up the shears and who you are today. If you feel like it, perhaps you could share a thought about that. It might be good for us to see we're not the only ones tending to these quiet gardens.